welcome back to another episode of Sideways Rain on a Friday. I'm your host, Chris, here with JR. And today we have an exciting guest on. We're going to be talking about a lot of Sideways Rain in this guest's career thus far. I want you guys to imagine having your first kid, leaving a company that you co-founded, and then betting everything on a new venture, and then having the pandemic hit and put all of that on pause. That's what we're going to be getting into today with our guest, Brian. Super excited to dive into that with JR, man. Another episode. Here we are.
Yeah, Brian Samson on today. I'm interested to chat with him. We only chatted briefly in the lead up to this, so we're going to be learning in real time today. But like Chris said, Brian doubled down. He didn't fold. He built a company that now helps U.S. businesses scale with nearshore talent across Latin America. So before we get into the nitty-gritty details, here comes the rain. All right, y'all, as you can see, we have Brian Samson here. Just a reminder of our format. We're going to cover the storm, but remember, there's always an umbrella coming, and we'll show you some clear skies, but don't get too used to those clear skies because there's storms every day. Today, we have Brian on. He's the founder of Plugg Technologies, a U.S.-based nearshore staffing firm connecting U.S. companies to top Latin American talent in tech, AI, health, IT, and BPO. And if you don't know what BPO is, like I did at the top of this, it's business process outsourcing. He's got 10 plus years of building nearshoring companies. I could go on and on. I got tons of background on Brian, but why do that when we got Brian here? Brian, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, the platform to talk to you guys. Grew up in the Midwest, ended up in California for a decade. Had the founder itch, thought I was going to be an expat in Asia, but ended up, just kind of I wouldn't call it sideways rain, but like totally unexpected. Ended up in, I had my heart set on Singapore, ended up in a place that couldn't have been more like 180 degrees from Singapore, which is Argentina, from like, building a business, cleanliness, like, hardcore rules to, Argentina, which is, beautiful, but chaotic. And then I spent the last 10 years doing nearshore Latin America companies and doing it mostly from Hawaii, which is where I'm raising my family here.
So that's a lot of geography dropping. Singapore, Midwest, Argentina, Hawaii. So selfishly, where did you grow up in the Midwest? Because I'm in Minnesota right now.
Okay, yeah, not too far from you, just outside Chicago.
Nice.
That's awesome. So, man, well traveled. We could definitely have some fun in the lightning round with all of the places that Brian has been.
Yeah, fun fact. I actually didn't get a passport till I was 28.
Wow.
So. Yeah, so I Chris, the Midwest. So I, and JR, we would do family vacations like camping in Wisconsin. That was the thing. So, I think I had a lot of like pent up. I needed to get out of here. Do some travel.
Yeah, we still head up as a family to northern Wisconsin for our camping trip every year. A place called Boot Lake, which is awesome. Shout out to the Nicolet National Forest and Wisconsin, also the biggest drinking state in the U.S. So that's a fun one. Brian, let's get down to business. What was the company you co-founded, and what led to that strategy conflict with your investors?
Yeah, we'll keep it real. So in late 2015, I had been working as a head of talent for a bunch of VC-funded tech companies in San Francisco. And that basically means, I was responsible for all the recruiting, talent acquisition, and then they just throw a bunch of random stuff, getting the office and the IT and real estate and things like that. But anyway, when I first got to San Francisco, I think I had a lot of maybe I wasn't so confident. I kind of had this like chip in my shoulder, that like, man, everybody here went to Stanford and Berkeley and MIT, and they seem like they're off the charts intelligent. So I felt like imposter syndrome all the time. I went to some school that nobody had heard of in the Midwest. And then, but after like 4 or 5 years, I realized I could kind of hang and wanted to give a shot, at being a founder. Ended up building this business plan. I had somebody that I found to invest. He liked my thesis, and kind of pivoted quickly from like recruiting to founder. And learn how to do pitch decks and discounted cash flow and kind of all the stuff on the fly. And he said yes, and was able to raise $2 million. I didn't really know this guy very well, but we like when you're kind of in that mode, and it was really my first time ever doing that. So I think there was like a lot of ego involved. Like, yeah, I just raised some money. Like I felt like I wasn't as grizzled, as a veteran in the space. So, there's a lot of like naivety, I think. And then we brought another partner along because, my background was recruiting and then kind of broadly business. So we brought somebody into the space or into the company that was, hey, please, guys. Okay, bye. So sorry, you guys.
No worries.
We got kids off to school right now.
Nice. Dude, I got two at home, so I know how it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. So where was I? So so I had an investor that funded with $2 million, and I think that number was like so unheard of for someone like me, where I grew up, and then we brought on another partner in the business who would be my co-founder, who had a technical background. So like on paper, it looked pretty well rounded. We were fairly capitalized. We had a business guy and then we had a tech guy. But I think the lesson that I would maybe share is I felt kind of seduced is maybe the right word, like seduced by all the excitement and energy of raising money, getting the company off the ground, and I just had wanted to do it so long that I didn't really like vet any of the players, I just kind of went for it. And I knew almost instantly that I was going to have co-founder conflict because I felt like I was carrying 99% of the load for a while, and then, we would have, like some expectation meetings and, I felt like I was getting resentful. And the business struggle too. I'll have you take a step back just to explain what the business was. So we were building fintech platforms in a minimum viable product way. Like, so your listeners might know, like MVP, minimum viable product. It's like whenever you're a early stage startup, tech startup, before you go like wild and build like a massive product or platform or software, you want to test it with like a little prototype, and that's what the MVPs are. So working prototype for fintech companies, and we put all of our software engineers in Argentina, and then we had sales in San Francisco. So I didn't have kids, but was married. My wife and I moved to Argentina, so we kind of got all that going. Kind of all along, I felt like I was carrying a lot of the weight, and the business had its good moments, but it also was hard. It was really hard, to kind of get get sales right, get the right team in place, navigate some of the chaos and currency fluctuations with Argentina and unpredictability. And it's a hard place to do business. But when you're determined, you're determined. So we kind of grinded that out. But fast forward to about 4 years in, and I had been traveling Argentina quite a bit. My wife, had just given birth to our son, and then my investor, who was very like hands off for months, and then he would swoop in and have all these like demands and requests. And we were clashing because I had brought on a really hardcore CFO who used to run like a $40 billion hedge fund. I couldn't believe I recruited this guy. He was just hanging out in Hawaii. And these finance guys that are used to 100-hour work weeks, they can't just sit on a beach. So after a couple of years of sitting on a beach, he's like, man, I need a challenge. So, we recruited him. He had a huge roster of connections. And so we started building out, an investment plan to like go big and really, really grow this thing. The original investor hated that idea. There's just all kinds of conflict. And then my son was born, and my investor, swooped back in, demanded that I go to Argentina for a couple months. I was like, no, my son was just born. Maybe I'll go for a week or two, in a few months, but like, no, I'm not going to leave her here on her own. That created a lot more conflict. And then it finally drew to a head, and we had to part ways, which meant me leaving the business.
That had to be pretty wild. One, that's a wild ask. Just had a baby. Now you're asking me to leave for a couple months with the newborn, and our first one at that. It's not even like the second child.
Yes.
What was the need from him for you to go to Argentina? Like, why did he think you couldn't manage it from remote?
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with control. I think he wanted to. I think there was a lot of like big brother-ish. Like he knew this is my first time as a founder. So like what did I know? I didn't have all these. Well, hey, like we don't have to do it this way because like I've done it this way before. This is my first time in the game, and he had been quite successful with a bunch of different companies. So. Who am I to question him? And I think his point of view was that the business could be way better run from there. And it was my responsibility, as a founder of the business.
That's a lot to unpack. And I've been in a similar situation where you get into a partnership with someone and there may be a little bit of friction and maybe you're not seeing eye to eye. I know in my experiences, there were signs that I saw that, for lack of a better word, I chose to ignore and say, this isn't going to be a big deal later down the road. Things will get better. We'll eventually get on the same page. What were some of the signs that maybe you saw early on that reared their head 4 years later that maybe you didn't listen to those signs, but you were aware of them? Or did you have any of those type of signs that you saw? What else did you learn from this experience?
Yeah, great question. Hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I look back, I'm like, but I think it was honestly probably like less about them and more about me just being a rookie, right? And like not knowing the game, not knowing like I should have, vetted more, maybe even like prioritized alignment. So now, I'm 10 years in this entrepreneurial world and I've been punched in the face a lot. But I also know, it's about alignment and people and expectations. I mean, if you get that right, the rest is easy. So, and I'm also in a position where, like, if I don't want to do business with someone or even a client, like it's just not a fit, I don't have to chase money anymore or prestige either, and I think chasing money and chasing prestige can lead to bad decisions.
Absolutely. If you prioritize money, you'll never have enough is a good quote, right? So I think you made the right choice in staying home with your family and just making that happen and parting ways. I'm sure there's a whole story in that parting ways part, but we're going to put that aside for now. You leave, you decide to go all in with your own money on a new venture. What did that look like at home and in your bank account?
Yeah. So I, had grown up as a recruiter, and I had this thesis anyway, from being this head of talent for VC funded tech companies where they usually either have no recruiters or one recruiter. And then they raise a bunch of money and they expect to hire like 20 first-rate engineers, overnight. But it never happens that way, because you don't have enough of a sourcing team, enough of a recruiting team, and this is not the kind of jobs where you post it and you get 50 applications from, computer science grads from Stanford. You got to hunt them and source them, and all that stuff takes a lot of time. So, so usually the first thing you do when you raise money is you hire a recruiting team, right? And that takes some time, and then you can go hunt. So if you close your funding round, say like your $20 million Series B, and then you want to go crazy, you kind of have to tell the CEO and CFO, well, actually, we're going to need probably 60 days at least before we can go crazy because we don't have enough manpower and horsepower. So my thesis was, what if I could create like a turnkey recruiting operation, that would just kind of plug in, like as soon as a company raised money, we had a turnkey team of recruiters and sourcers that knew the VC funded tech world and knew their way around places like Crunchbase and AngelList and what are the top companies and the top schools and how to recruit these difficult roles. So that was my thesis. And as I was leaving, that first company, I knew that that was a need, but then I also had these 4 years of Argentina, and like South America and Latin America talent, and seeing like, wow, people have really, really good English skills. They can recruit as well. But not just for Latin America. What if I turn these people on to recruit for the States, right? So it's the same time zone. And all I have to do is kind of teach them the VC funded San Francisco tech world. So I got into that with very little money. I think it was like $2,000 of my own money just to get going, which is a lot different from the 2 million that I had raised. Mm-hmm. And within a couple of years, we had invoiced 8 figures worth of business. So it had some legs. We had 60 some recruiters that we were billing out, and a lot of recruiting is billed like real estate. It's free until a transaction happens, and then the real estate agent gets the big commission or the recruiter gets the big commission. Yep. We had a different model. We were billing by the recruiting hours. So we were, sometimes billing 8,000 hours a month for recruiters. And this sounds bad, but whether we made a placement or not, we still sent an invoice, right? Because it's recruiting hours that we're billing, not success. So, that worked out really well, and that worked really well until COVID hit.
You knew we were going there next.
The famous phrase. No, that's awesome though. So you land in Argentina, you're staying there for an extended period of time. You're mingling with locals, you're meeting people, you're understanding the culture there. I have to ask, when you had this idea, was it something that you were passionate about in the recruiting world? Was it a way that you saw that you could make money? Like, what was that light bulb moment like when the
Yeah.
idea came to you and you said, you know what, this is what I'm meant to do next?
Yeah, I think there was like maybe four threads. Like number one, now I had some confidence as a founder, right? Because I had 4 years of doing it, which is a lot different from being a rookie founder. I think the second thing is I knew that this problem existed because I had experienced this problem. Sometimes, we build for what we experience, and as I had a talent, I never had a turnkey recruiting team that I could just hire, and I knew that a lot of people needed this. Um, I I actually underestimated how lucrative this can be because my timing was terrible. It was good, then terrible, and then insanely good because there was the quiet quitting era, and companies had like unlimited money for recruiting. Everything else was budgeted, but that was an era where like they would just throw whatever they needed, and the VC money was there. So we had significantly higher bill rates than I think we would in a normal market. But that wasn't part of the thesis. So, I think that was kind of like a happy accident. And then I think like the twist that I added was this whole, Latin America, because, now I had 4 years of, like you said, mingling, having dinner with all these people, understanding the culture, really having the confidence that I think they could do it, that they could hang, and we wouldn't have much of a drop off there. So, kind of all four of those things together, it worked really, really well.
Yeah, beautiful. Talk about gambling on yourself. Kudos to you for making that jump.
Yeah, it was. I'll say it was scary, but then it quickly had legs, and I think. Yeah, I brought this up before. When I first got to San Francisco, I kind of had this like imposter syndrome, but like this kind of chip on my shoulder to prove myself. And I think I've just always been like that, where and then, even when I knew right away, like I probably have the wrong two partners in that first business, chip on my shoulder. We're going to try to make it work, even despite going out on my own, going to make it work despite, so sometimes you just have to like will yourself, no matter what.
Yeah, like you said in some of the pre-questions we sent you, there's nobody there to save you, so you got to save yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not going to push yourself out of bed, nobody's going to be there to do it for you. I'm curious, as we get towards this like umbrella moment, COVID sort of shook you, but then everything got really great. How did your hours versus success model appeal to your customers? And was there any specific insight about Latin America that helped you with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the obvious is the rates are a lot more attractive for Latin America recruiters. And if you can get your customers to talk to these recruiters like, wow, their English is perfect. It's not like scripted or accented, or, what if we kind of go off script, it gets really, really wild. they're watching the same Netflix shows we are. They're watching in our English, our colloquialisms and style and slang. So that's a huge part of being able to sell Latin America recruiting is, it doesn't feel like it's like a robot, calling you and, going over a script. And candidate experience matters a lot, especially with the VC tech world. They really want their brands to be protected, and I think the Latin America recruiters could do that. We also I think just got really lucky in the time we were in. Like, there's never been a better time in that late 2020 to mid 2022 for time and materials recruiting.
Huh.
When companies have unlimited budgets and like they'll whatever if we need to throw more money at the problem, we'll do it. Right. And I mean, how often does that happen in business? Like I just kind of caught lightning in a bottle for just under 2 years.
Sure.
So the time and materials model works, but when companies have tighter burn rates, right? So think like the last 2 years, actually, especially for SaaS companies, software as a service, AI companies are getting all the capital right now, but like SaaS has kind of been left behind a little bit. So they're not getting, they're not raising the next funding round. So they've got to kind of work really tight with their cash, and they'll do a lot more contingency. Like, we'll only pay upon success.
Sure.
But the 2 years prior, when it was the bull run, whatever we need to do to buy results, we'll buy it.
Sure.
So you find this model, you start to test it. I assume you have a couple of pilots with some big clients using your connections because you're already in this industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a given client or group of clients where you had the aha moment that this was something that could scale and scale rapidly? And what was that moment like for you when you had the validation, you piloted with a client that loved it, and you were instantly asked for more? Walk us through that as a new founder, as a seasoned founder. What was your mindset like? How did you navigate those times?
Yeah, we got lucky. We landed some nice names, and then as you land those names, you land bigger names. You use those to get bigger names. So Superhuman, that email company, we worked with them, and Roa Health, which is a $7 billion health tech company. We worked with Credit Karma, even Cintas, the big uniform company. So we kind of use one to land another logo and another logo. And, I will tell you this. My ego probably got big during that moment because I thought I was like the world's greatest salesperson.
Yeah.
No, I'm just selling, cold water at the end of a hot marathon.
Sure.
I was just in the right place at the right time. And I realized later, like, maybe I wasn't that good at sales as I thought I was.
For those listening, and I'm curious too, but they're not in tech, maybe they run different agencies. Like, what's the first experiment you'd recommend if they're nearshore curious, but nervous to do it?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So the company that I have today, Plugg Technologies, we've got about 100 team members that we bill out to our U.S. customers. So that's a little bit different from the company we just talked about. So instead of the billing out recruiters, we're billing out, the actual end labor. So software developers, BPO, VAs, marketing managers, things like that. And we do it all over Latin America. So everywhere from Mexico to Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica. And Nearshore Curious is a great term, because I think just about everybody who's been in a hiring role has either heard of or probably tried Asia. India and the Philippines are the dominant countries there.
Yep.
But Nearshore has really only kind of been in our vocabulary, for a couple of years now. And really, post-COVID, remote work became more popular, but I think it went sideways so fast, where all of a sudden, like pre-COVID, you had your team in New York, and then COVID hits. You're like, okay, you guys can work anywhere, and then everybody's moving to like Bali, Indonesia, and South Africa, and like, whoa, wait, like we're never working on the same time zone anymore. This is crazy. So, so then there was this like rubber band that came back, but remote work still works. Cost savings still matter. So that's where Latin America has really kind of became powerful. So there's a lot more curiosity, like, what can this do for my business? How can this help me? And, we have conversations all week long, dozens of conversations with people that are curious. Some it's not a fit, some it's not a fit right now. But that's perfectly okay. We'll talk to people, give them advice on the nuances with customs and talent pockets and currency and total addressable market of a candidate pool, things like that, and help them think through their budget and their goals and what's the right country for them.
You use a term I'm not familiar with, talent pockets. What's that?
Yeah. So I'll give you a good example. Nicaragua and really all Central America has become amazing for call center talent. So great English at really reasonable prices. And, Central America is usually on like Central Time Zone or Central Time Zone adjacent. But I probably wouldn't go to Central America for, AI engineers. But I would go to Brazil and Argentina for AI engineers. They have really good talent pocket there. But on the contrary, I probably wouldn't go there for call center support because the cost of living there is higher. So I wouldn't be able to get the bang for my buck for call center talent.
That's very insightful.
Yeah.
From the customer perspective, let's say I'm a customer or I'm an entrepreneur that has a startup that I'm looking to source some talent for. What would you say in your experience is some of the biggest misconceptions that you hear when you're in that scoping or discovery call with a new client that has no idea what Nearshore is or has never experienced it? What are some of the common misconceptions you hear?
Yeah, I think there's maybe one really fundamental difference that I've seen between offshore and nearshore, and a lot of just kind of cultural. So if your audience, and maybe let me stop. Have either of you been able to travel in Latin America?
I was in Buenos Aires 2 weeks ago.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah.
I have not had the pleasure.
Yeah. So, I think, you'll probably, laugh at this, JR, but there's like a passion, of these people here. It's like they're speaking Spanish with Italian mannerisms, like big hand gestures, lots of passion. And they're not afraid to tell you when they think you're wrong.
Sure.
They love debate. They love discussion. And when I contrast that with the offshore world, there's a lot of just kind of culturally like hierarchical, you don't really question the boss. You don't really question the decisions. And often they have like 5 layers of management, in between, sometimes more, so like bad news never goes up. It only goes down. But I think in Latin America, and this is a large place with many countries, but generally speaking, you'll hear about it if they disagree with you. And I think small teams kind of need that feedback, right? Like you want to get your tech stack right and make good decisions throughout building your product, and they'll tell you about it. And I think that's a misconception that offshore, nearshore, like it's just a bunch of resources. Like they're sometimes known as low cost resources. They'll just follow direction. But sometimes you want people that will act just like they're part of your team in the States and give you all sorts of feedback.
I love that. I wish my team would tell me what I do wrong more often. We needed to insert a little bit more Latin American flavor in here. Because there is a cultural fear of complaining or pointing out the problems up here. And I wish they would actually do it more so we could fix it. All right. You're running your own company. You got 100 people. You're running it out of Latin America. You're in Hawaii. Things are working, right? You're out of the storm. One thing you talked about in your pre-work, though, is Latin American companies overestimate their ability to sell in the U.S. and vice versa. The U.S. firms overestimate their ability to recruit in Latin America. Can you unpack that a little bit and tell us more about what that means?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was a big tenet in how we built this company. Where we're a U.S. company. I have a president in Atlanta who runs the day-to-day, and our clients are all U.S. companies, and I think they want to work with people that are from the U.S. that kind of understand them from a sales perspective. They're not sending some crazy international wire. The contracts are in like straightforward, normal business English contracts. So what we've noticed is there's kind of like 3 different buckets of these nearshore staffing companies. The first bucket is a really good technical person from Latin America kind of starts to build his own little engineering team and sells that to the States, and their talent is awesome. You can't take any of that away from them. And their prices are good, but they just can't get past these like, well, send me, this complicated wire, or, here's my contract's only in Spanish, or, my entity. And the inverse of that is, sometimes you have a little gold rush, and I think we have wind in our sails right now with Latin America nearshoring. There's a lot of U.S. companies that, like, oh yeah, we can recruit in Latin America, and you kind of need like some institutional credibility there. This is a continent that is used to volatility and chaos, and they don't trust their government. So they also don't trust people they don't know.
Yeah.
And I've got a 10-year track record in Latin America. People know me. I pay my bills. I do the right thing. But it's really hard to do that if you've never been there. And you're trying to, create a nearshore recruiting company. Candidates just won't follow you. They won't go to your company. So we try to do the best of both. We have Latin American infrastructure, recruiters, payroll, compliance, operations. And then north of the border, in the same company, we have salespeople, engagement, solutions.
Awesome. Chris, or go ahead.
Yeah. So I got one last question before we get into the fun part. My mind is going crazy over here thinking about how the hell you figured out all of these talent pockets across the globe. How did you identify that AI support is best in Brazil, and so on and so forth? Like, my question to you is it simply just being boots on the ground and interacting with these people and having the expertise to know where they excel and where they don't, and understanding the economics of each area? Is there a secret sauce to how you came up with this? I'm just very curious, because it's very intriguing to be able to connect with so many different people from different backgrounds and different cultures, and then bridging that back to the US. I can only imagine what that's like. So super curious to understand how you kind of developed a rhythm to figure out these talent pockets.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I think 10, 15 years ago. So like, I don't want to pretend that I'm Christopher Columbus and I invented Nearshore, right? Like that this existed long before, I got down there. But I will say that 10, 15 years ago, it was traditional like software exporting and integration work, maintenance work. Like it's like the hard stuff would be with the engineers in the States, and then like the maintenance stuff, they'd either offshore or nearshore. What's really changed over the last few years is because there's been such an impressiveness of the talent there, is the money is following. And that means venture capital money. So Latin America is starting to create a lot of their own VC funded tech companies. And so they're all learning how to be like early stage engineers with big scope and solving big problems rather than like the legacy code and kind of fixing bugs. They're building brand new software and building really, really hard things in regulated industries, health tech, fintech, IoT. So the talent is getting better and better and better. And then, a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of experience, down there, you start to see where some of the money is going, but also where some of the government partnerships are. For example, in Brazil, they have a city called Florianopolis, where they've made this like a targeted place for startups, tech companies, investment, and government ease to build businesses. Kind of these like tax incentive, areas where, sometimes like the states will have opportunity zones or like areas where they really want money to flow to.
Yep.
You'll see that in certain parts of Latin America.
Awesome. Lightning round. Chris.
All right.
What do you got?
Let's go. My favorite part. I want to start back in Argentina. How's the food? What's your favorite dish or favorite dinner spot in Argentina?
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny. So, the steak is so good and it's so cheap that my wife and I went out for steak dinners like 6 nights every week. So, so I mean, just like pounding like big steaks and wine and all that. So we actually ended up going to we took a little trip to Asia, in between, and all I wanted was vegetables when I got to Asia. Like, just give me like this morning glory dish of just only vegetables because, I couldn't see another steak for a while.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to take you all the way back to Chicago now. Are you a Bears fan?
Bears fan? Yep, I sure am.
All right, this podcast is over.
Nice. It's not every day you meet a Bears fan.
Yeah, well, I think we're kind of split this year, right? One and one.
Yeah, but look at number 1 seed in the NFC right now, right?
Yeah. We haven't seen that in a long time.
Big stuff.
I like him. He's humble. He's like, I'm not getting too high right now. That's the Bears we're talking about. Oh man, that's funny. So I'm going to take it back to you're a man well traveled, right? Any travel hacks, any travel tips, favorite airports you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is pretty well known by now, but Singapore has like the number 1 airport in the world. And I remember I would purposely get there like hours and hours and hours before my flight so I could experience all the amenities. Like I worked out at the gym, went to the pool, took a shower. They have a movie theater with free movies, hawker centers, which is like Singapore style food courts. I mean, I'd get there like 10 hours ahead of time just to do all the amenities. Like, what? You know, you would never go to a U.S. airport or gas 10 hours ahead of time, but I did that in Singapore.
That is a crazy concept. Working out at the airport.
Yeah, it was great. I felt awesome in my flight. You know, I got,
That's cool.
like naturally tired instead of airport tired.
Yeah, like 10 of us in LaGuardia would just be hell. You're in Hawaii. We didn't ask where, but what's your favorite Hawaiian island?
Yeah, I'm on Oahu, which is the one with most of the people here. I like all four big ones. I've also been to Lanai,
Nice.
but Kauai is like the jungle island. Maui's nice luxury beaches. The Big Island has the volcanoes. But I like Oahu because the beach is right over here. There's great hiking, and then we also have a Costco.
Nice.
Nice. Were you guys affected by the fires that happened recently?
Yeah, so that was 2022, and yeah, just devastating for Maui. We certainly saw like bad air quality, but there wasn't any fires on Oahu, thankfully. But yeah, Maui it was rough for those guys.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, glad that you weren't affected too much from that. But to wrap this up, this has been a super insightful conversation. Do you have any upcoming projects or things in the works that you want to share? Maybe give a little preview to, or anything that you want to share with the listeners before we let go?
Yeah, maybe just double down on the point of we have conversations all the time with people that are like, tell me more about Latin America. Like, how does this work? What do I do first? Like, we have these conversations all the time. So I look forward to it. I love educating people on Latin America. And I was lucky to have a lot of firsthand experience, and my business partner has a lot of firsthand experience as an expat in Monterrey, Mexico. So this is something we love doing. We invite any conversations, all free of charge, give you our insight and help point people in the right direction. And if they're curious about the company, it's Plugg Technologies, Plugg, and the website is plugg.tech.
Awesome. We'll throw that in the description as well as maybe a link to you have a podcast as well and a LinkedIn page, and we'll just throw it all in there. And so you all can find where to find Brian. Yeah, like Chris said, this is a great episode. This is all a new topic, this nearshoring stuff and even offshoring for me. So I certainly learned a lot, and appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, I had a great time, you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, Chris, that's episode 10, season 2. We're cruising this season. I thought it was really interesting what Brian said at the top about, getting alignment with your investors on the early end, because, you and I have seen some of this, right? Where we're trying to get really stringent alignment and you get the lawyers involved. And sometimes that can be its own sword edge too, where it sort of turns people off. So it's a topic we could really dive into of like, how do you find that middle ground of like, here's exactly what I want, but leave a little leeway for both parties?
Most definitely. And the number one thing I learned is there's even more options out there for bringing your idea to life.
Hell yeah.
Whatever phase of your entrepreneurship you need assistance in, there's a team that can source you talent that's going to get that done and get it at an affordable price. So shout out to Brian Samson for today's episode. Super insightful.
Yeah, great episode.
But yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Episode 10. Until next time, that's all I got.
All right, until next time.
On an island morning, trade winds blow. Brian's got a laptop where the palm trees grow. From Chicago winters to Buenos Aires rain, he builds a bridge of talent on a global wave again. When the storm rolls in and the sky turns gray, he bets on himself and he finds a way. Sideways rain on the island tonight, ukuleles playing while he's holding on tight. From LATAM shores to the Oahu sand, nearshore rhythm in Steakhouse nights and currency swing, VC money and the chaos it brings. Walked from the deal when the